Ahoy! Yesterday I asked you guys what you would like to see from Season 8 in my community tab. I said name whatever comes to mind, items, guards, map changes, etc. I just wanted to go through the replies a little bit, give my thoughts where fitting, just a very casual video about this. So let's do that. The first one is from Chimpazilla, who would like to see a Celtic assassin to round off the Pantheon. Up until this point I thought, well, that's not gonna happen because Iris doesn't go for filling Pantheons anymore. But a suggestion was added here, and that is Cleotna, I don't know how to pronounce that, the Queen of Banshees. And I think that would be a very interesting character. Although, I don't know if we would have the typical shapeshifter form in there, if that would fit with that. At the same time, I really don't know if we're ever really gonna get a full stand swapping assassin in that sense. McNeil would like to see Gilgamesh. With Tiamat on the horizon, I think that's also very much possible. Dog Zong says, I'd like to see more items with very specific purposes and niches. A bunch of items designed to counter or strengthen one thing would be a lot more interesting than a handful of items that you have to buy or else you're trolling. And I agree with that. I think it's very unfortunate that anti-heal is almost mandatory in every single game. So there is a specific counter item, but it's barely even used as a specific counter, but rather is so good that it's more of a blanket counter. And we have very few items that really stand out as counters against only a few situations. Winged Blade comes to mind, or Magi's Blessing, but really I would like to see more of that for more specific purposes as well. Paul Dominique says, also would love to see Hi-Rez just improve a lot of features that were left untouched. The clan system, the vault, tutorials are weak, and the learning tab. And I agree with that as well. I think some of those things are more important than others, but I do think there are many fields outside of the main game that could see some improvement. At the same time, at this point I've accepted if, for example, the learning tab stays relatively weak, it's not really as much of an important point as, say, the main game, because yes, people will have to look for information elsewhere, but as long as the game is good, you get more people coming in and they will find the information as well. I am Colby Jack wants more god remodels. There are still so many gods that the community has requested to be remodeled, and if the Ares and the goddess who cannot be named remodels are anything to go by, Hi-Rez can do really good remodels. Personally, I would want either a Sobek or a Hunbat's remodel first, because those gods look so ugly compared to some of their recent skins, and I completely agree with that. I really am not sure why Hunbat's especially is being pushed so far back, when he honestly looks worse than some of the gods who were already remodeled. Sheldon Matthews would like to see the Four Horsemen, specifically the Greek versions, listing that we already have Thanatos as the god of death and Ares as the god of war. I personally would rather see the Four Horsemen, but the Christian version. I don't know if Hi-Rez would ever touch that, but I think it would be really cool. Big fan of Darksiders, so that's my type of stuff. Kevin McCormack would like to have joint accounts with PC so he can have everything he paid for on his PS4 and his PC as well. Unfortunately, that's not up to Hi-Rez at all, so I doubt it's ever going to happen. I don't think that Sony sees any profit in it, and if Sony doesn't see profit, then they don't do it because that's their whole system. Keep everything as exclusive as possible, unfortunately. Revenge says, like to see the Pantheons fleshed out that have a lower number of gods. This one is, again, not gonna happen because Hi-Rez has moved away from this goal in general and would rather go for the most interesting and coolest gods. And looking at the roster this year and the releases that they had, I am fairly certain they're not gonna go away from that style anymore because I think it worked out pretty well for them so far. Bad Andy on PS4 says, I just want love shown to the other maps and modes. Siege really needs something to make people play again. I love Clash, but I would love a new map or something. Make it mini Conquest. As much as I would love to see these modes being updated, I feel like that is not going to be Hi-Rez priority for the foreseeable future, and there are multiple reasons for that. A, there are not that many players playing these modes, so investing a lot of resources into them is not necessarily rewarding. B, bringing more players into these modes might drag them away from other game modes, and that's the last thing that Hi-Rez would want, because that would mean an even smaller Conquest player base and even more complaints for them. Jose Miguel Contreras Verdugo, or something like that, I hope I got it halfway right, says, I know this may never happen, but I would love a Chilean Pantheon, because we have really interesting characters and creatures. I would also love to see more voodoo gods. I actually had to look into the Chilean Pantheon a little bit, I know nothing about it, but I do have to say there is some interesting potential there. And I wouldn't set my hopes too low because Hi-Rez has said repeatedly they don't care particularly about the Pantheons anymore, they want interesting gods. So if you find a god from the Chilean Pantheon that you think would be really interesting and you write down a kit for them that could work very well, or say why you think this god would be interesting in-game, post it on Reddit, keep it short, and the developers see it, you might just have a chance that a god like that makes it into the game. It's just a different way of introducing gods these days, so it's more about a god that can offer something cool or is popular. Dr. Depression 460 says, please give me HUD customization on console. I agree, but that one is one way I think Hi-Rez is just not going to do it because too few players are going to use it and it's going to be too complicated to set up and too glitchy. I think they may even regret ever having set it up on PC, seeing how it works sometimes. What I would definitely love to see them do is just finally clean up the current HUD, both on PC and console, just make it look a bit better and give the information a little bit of a better layout. It just feels so outdated to me. The Cannon Brigade says, maybe have a section with retro maps. Season 2 or 3 maps, dare I say beta maps. I think that would be really cool. Problem is finding enough players, so it would have to be something that only happens as an adventure, and I imagine it's kind of hard to even get these maps to work at this point, because I think they'd have to be adjusted a fair bit until they function fully. Otherwise, I think it would not take that long for Whiskey to even import them into other programs. He has to recreate a lot of stuff. So I don't know if Hi-Rez ever wants to put in that effort. I think it would be very interesting though. Hakim Sugiman says in all caps, we need a new tutorial, and I agree with that. I think the whole tutorial just needs to be overhauled, cleaned up, get the weird relic choices out of there and everything else, just so that new players have the best experience possible from the start of the game. Wisdom Cat suggests a bigger map and 3D terrain with ascending and descending areas. This is very interesting because you can actually make it so that this gives the game advantages as well. I am afraid that Hi-Rez is never going to do that. The game is just too heavily coded on this single layer and then the additional air layer basically, where everyone is not even hitting each other already, so you can't just have air fights at this point. So bringing in a full terrain would just change so much about how the game is played, how it functions, that I think a lot of players would effectively end up being unhappy with it, even if they like the idea. I think it would be cool to have a MOBA like that. I know that Paragon tried it and unfortunately didn't survive. And I liked the mechanic, but I don't think it's something that could work in SMITE at this point. Maybe for a SMITE 2 or something. Mr. Handsome Boy now says, would love to see a sandbox deathmatch mode. Small sandbox, but interior and exterior locations. Free-for-alls in addition to arena-style deathmatch. The problem with free-for-alls, I think, in SMITE was already illustrated quite well by Medusa's deathmatch. It just ends up being very messy because usually sitting back is the most rewarding. That could possibly be addressed, but we know that Hi-Rez doesn't really want to introduce additional modes at this point, only temporary ones, because they would just split up the player base even more than it already is. In the same sense, Crazy Kalen suggests a legit 2v2 game mode, same issue here. Even though I think it's fun, it's probably never going to be more than a mode of the day. J Clank wants to see some crazy items, wouldn't mind a bit of chaos to kick things off for the new season. If the data mining that we found so far is anything to go by, that wish will most certainly be granted. There seem to be a lot of crazy things going on. We've got more to talk about in that regard as well. John Dripper wants the old Thorns and Nemean reflect damage back, or revert the changes of not being able to use Thorns while hard CC'd. Now, this is obviously a controversial topic. I've already said in the past, I think reflect mechanics are fun if implemented right. I think, for example, on Kuzenbo it's really fun to have that. I know that a lot of people also highly dislike it, so this will always be debated. And I feel like Hi-Rez is not really looking to go back to it because they've been scaling it down so much in the first place. Innate Gravity suggests lots of item changes, like making more items that are class specific. Example, make bows hunter only, make some defense items guardians or warrior only. To make up for it, also adding more items to the game, also being class specific. Another change I'd like to see are more items like the masks, where they buff one aspect of your guard but decrease another. The problem with adding a lot of class specific items is that balance just becomes a lot harder. An entire class can easily become overpowered because they're the only one who have access to a very strong item. It also means that the sample size for testing will be smaller because only one group consistently tests things out. I feel like to a degree that can still be fun, and we have some pretty solid choices when it comes to class exclusive items, but completely focusing on that or overdoing it could quickly turn it sour as well. So this is a very risky choice for them to make. But I definitely do agree that more items like masks would be really cool that reward you in one way and punish you in another. I really like that mechanic, even though it feels like most people avoid those items most of the time. And that is all I got time for right now. If you want to see the other ideas as well, check my community tab. There's a lot more replies in there that I couldn't go through here. Feel free to also add your own ones in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, click the sub button and maybe the bell so you get notified of other upcoming SMITE stuff. We have a lot of stuff, especially surrounding Season 8, coming up in the next days. Depending on where you are, the next video will actually come out for you today or tomorrow. So I hope to see you for the next one soon, whenever that is. ZiSotto, out.